Hello and welcome to Game Your Own Way. Today I'll be talking about an extremely powerful Minecraft-related program that absolutely changes the game. Bored of all those repetitive worlds, landscape you could swear you've seen before, or even those impossible to navigate caves? Well, no more, because Worldpainter lets you customize every block of your world. So, how do you get it? Step 1, do a Google search for Worldpainter. It should look like this. Click on your link, select the correct version from this list, navigate the setup wizard, and it's done. That's it. Should appear in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen if you're running Windows. Click on it and it should open right up. When you open up the program, you'll be greeted with this wonderful slab of world right in the middle. On the far right, you have your brush settings. Far left, you have your tools and what you paint on the world. This thing over here. That's all you need to know for now. In the center here on the world, you can see if I hover over it, the green is grass, yellow, sand, and the blue is water. It also shows the depth. Now, what does this world look like if you export it into Minecraft? Well, it's pretty bad. And if you press Ctrl 3, you give a 3D view in Worldpainter of your world. It's pretty flat, pretty boring, and it doesn't even generate with trees. Now 3D view won't show trees, but it just doesn't. Because the default biome is plains for Worldpainter, it won't generate with any trees. In this video, I'm going to be making an island. You can make whatever type of world you want, but I find islands are usually good for kind of showing you all of the basic features in one world. So, what would be the first step in that? So firstly, you're going to want to manipulate the terrain to be an island. And Worldpainter has a default water level, so if you change the height of any of the world, it will fill with water if you go down far enough, or it will fill in the water if you go high enough. So how do you go about changing the height of any of the blocks here? So in your tools category, there's a little up arrow, down arrow symbol that raises or lowers the terrain with left click to raise, right click to lower. And you scroll to change the brush size. You get the brush settings over here, which are just what they look like. So square will make a raised piece of square terrain, which is actually pretty nasty. And then you can give it soft edges if you care to. So to make an island, firstly what I'm going to do is lower all of the land around it to fill it with water. Now the default world is not very large, but this will be a good starter size to kind of get a grasp on the basic tools here. So hold please while I surround this land in water. Alright, I've lowered the terrain all around the edges so it is filled with water, and I'm stuck with a central piece of land in the middle, which is a great start. It's already an island. However, you may be concerned about the disgustingly edged squares in the middle. The bright and the dark there is Worldpainter trying to show me that there are sheer cliffs with no smooth transition. So what happens if that occurs in your world? Well, the little slope-looking tool up in the upper left again is your smooth tool, and you can hold over the rough parts to smooth it out. And by default, that's pretty weak, so I would turn the intensity all the way up, especially if you make some pretty egregious mistakes like those squares. Next, I want to establish the general shape of my island. I've made water, but it's sort of just a disgustingly blobby square. So I'm going to change a little bit about the shape. Unless you're trying to go for something specific, you can really just kind of do random stuff with this tool, and it will look cool. All right, next step, after you're happy with your shape, would be to establish where you want high ground to be. Now I think this looks like prime territory for a mountain range, so I'm going to raise the land there quite a bit. Perfect. And it's really good to use the 3D view as much as you can, because it's super easy to accidentally make some really crazy terrain. So it's always good to check that. These are actually looking a little flat. I'd make them a bit higher. All right, I have my highlands established. And once you're done doing that, next step would be making your mountains look rough. Because right now, you can check 3D view, they look blobby. And that's fine if you just want rolling hills, but if you want some slightly more impressive mountains, you're going to want to use this pyramid tool. They're one of two up in the upper left corner up here in your tools section. One is a pyramid rotated 45 degrees, and the other is a regular pyramid. Now they are automatically made with sandstone, but that won't matter much, as you'll see in a bit. Right now, just worry about sort of getting your ridges right. You can actually hold to get some ridges on the steeper parts quickly, like that. The longer you hold, obviously, the steeper it'll fill. So yeah, once you're happy with your ridges, move on to the next step. Oh, and remember to use the 45 degrees rotated one too to get ridges going the other way. It adds a lot of extra depth to your mountains and can make them look really cool. All right, and I'll check 3D view because this looks pretty nice. And yeah, I think those will make good mountains. Obviously, you need to change the terrain type to be correct. Right now it's sandstone. And there's a little bit of smoothing that could happen, but it's a good start. Once you're about happy with adding your ridges, it does not have to be particular. It can literally just be random the way I did it. You take the smooth tool again, crank down the intensity, depending on how craggy you want your mountains. The more intense your smooth tool, the smoother your mountains are going to be. I'm gonna make it pretty low because I want these mountains to be pretty steep, and you'll see it start to smooth them out a bit, but it will keep the general ridge shape, or it should. So, 3D view, and I'm noticing that pyramid in the back is looking very pyramid-like and not very mountain-like, so I'm going to do a little bit more raising, lowering the terrain around it to hopefully make it look more natural, and also fix some of those more pyramid-like bumps in the front there. Alright, now that I've made it look a bit more natural and my mountains are done in appearance, the next step is going to be changing the terrain type. So firstly, to change the terrain type of your mountains, you go into the terrain tab here on your far left, and you'll be greeted with a bunch of blocks from Minecraft. Now, for now, I'm going to pick grass, and I'm going to pick the spray paint tool. You can pick the spray paint, marker, or fill, and actually fill might be good for this, so I'll use that. If you're using fill, you won't have to worry about the brush styles in the upper right corner here, or the brush settings here, but if you are, those are applicable. But if you're using fill, you can just click on the sandstone and it will fill that continuous area with your selected terrain type. So for me, grass, it'll fill any continuous area with grass. And you can do that for everything, but it is easier to clean up with the brush. Max intensity will just basically make it work like a marker, and you can go around cleaning it up. All right, once that's done, it's time to make the mountains rocky. So the way to do that is to play around with this extremely cool little thing Worldpainter has called Global Terrain Settings. It's in the Edit tab up here, Global Operations, fill with terrain type, pick a rock. It has several to choose from. I personally like their rock preset because it is stone and cobblestone, which actually looks really good and rugged compared to default Minecraft mountains. And you can choose where to fill with that. So obviously, because they're mountains, we're going to want it to only fill on the really steep surfaces, and that's what this little thing down here is for. With the degrees, only fill if an angle is above, usually 35 is pretty good, but you can adjust that. And go. It's pretty good. It left some grass and it made them nice and rocky. So that looks great. We can check 3D view again, Control 3, and they are looking splendid. Actually, these mountains are insane. Normally my mountains don't even turn out this good when I'm using these tools. Anyway, next step is to add snow on your mountains. Say you want snow-capped mountains, and even though these aren't very tall, you can check the Y value. These only get to Y 130. The very top here, you can see in the bottom left down there. You go back to Global Operations in the Edit up in the upper right, or upper left. You go to Global Operations, fill with terrain type. Actually, you could fill with terrain type and pick snow. That definitely works. Or you can fill with layer, frost. You may notice a bunch of other things down here. A lot of these don't really do much. For example, chasms and caverns. There are settings for those, but I wouldn't mess with those unless you're pretty confident with a lot of the other peripheral Worldpainter features. But frost is a basic default setting that just adds a layer of snow on top of all of your blocks. So we'll keep the rock and the grass and just add snow on top. At or above a certain Y level, let's call it, since the highest point is 130, let's call it 110, maybe only on the very top. You can choose for it to be only on a type of terrain, which you can select on map with the eyedropper tool. However, I just want it at or above a certain level completely. I actually want it to be below rock so that I can get a really cool, I want to see if that works. I don't know if there's any grass that's actually that high, but sometimes that can make a really cool snowy rocky mountain effect. And actually I might up that a bit just because it's not going to be on much otherwise. I would definitely actually click the feather option there because that means it will have a softer border instead of just being a hard line. It'll be a few Y levels above and below that as well. So I'm going to go with that. And it didn't fill very much. You can check the 3D view. It will have the frost in it. Yeah, okay. So I'm actually going to go back to the global operations, re-input all my things. I'm actually going to do 100. No, 110. And below 45 degrees. And that should be good. Yes, definitely feather though. Go. All right. Well, I think that's actually pretty good. It'll definitely be better. That should be good for your snow. You can also do that with the solid snow blocks, which would be in the terrain in that menu. All right. And with our mountains done, let's turn our attention to the beaches. Go back to global operations. This is like the best tool because it's consistent across the whole world. Fill with terrain type, sand, at or below, and keep in mind the water level is 62, which is the default in Minecraft. So however many Y levels above that would be how many blocks of beach above the water there would be. So for example, 63 here would actually be only one block of beach above the water. So usually 64 or 5 is good. I'm actually going to do 65. I'm going to see what that looks like. Feather would definitely recommend, and below a certain point. I have some steep sections. I'd call it below 40 degrees. That should be okay. Yeah, it filled in all of those lower areas with sand and gave it a nice, more gradual border. Actually turned out pretty good. You can check your 3D view. I definitely recommend doing that frequently, and it's already looking really cool. So, how do you actually add trees? Because all of the grass, it auto-assigns to the plains biome. Click the biomes tab, and you can select a biome like terrain and use it with all the same brush tools. Although, again, it's easier to use global operations, and it's a little globe up here in your tool thing if you want to get to it faster, in the upper left. And I would fill with biome, your selected biome. I'm gonna choose definitely a jungle type, probably modified jungle edge. Only on, and this is where we can select on map. Grass. Yes. So only on grass. And you can also add at or above Y level and degree modifiers, but for a small island like this, I like just thinking that even on the mountains, it's just covered in rainforest. And actually modified jungle edge is a bit sparse. And let's go full jungle hills. All right, and let's go. And it doesn't look like anything happened because the biomes are not being shown. On your biomes tab, there should be a show button, and then you can see the biomes. They'll have little signs. The jungle is a jungle tree, and you won't be able to see anything in 3D view. It does not add the foliage in this step, so you won't be able to see anything. However, when you export it, you will be able to see it. So let's do that actually. So, file. First, save world as. Name it something. I'll call this simple tropical island. .world. All of your world files are going to be .world. Save it. Oh, before I forget, one more thing. Actually, a very important thing is edit, dimension properties, other layers. Allow Minecraft to populate the entire terrain. Otherwise, the biomes won't work correctly. This needs to be checked for anything to generate right, for ores to spawn correctly, and everything. Otherwise, it will literally just be sand, grass, and stone. So if you want any biome stuff, allow Minecraft to populate the terrain. Now, you go into File, Export as new Minecraft map, and it's really easy to get it into Minecraft. From the exporting screen, all you're going to have to do is check off what you want. Usually when I'm just checking out worlds, I like setting it to creative by default and normal by default. Those may not be your defaults. I think there's something in edit where you can change your default presets for these things, but not that hard to change every time if you want. Generated structures, keep in mind, only generates structures outside of your world. It doesn't generate them on your world, so you won't be getting any villages or anything on your world, so definitely keep that in mind as well. I keep it on, because why not? You can test export. This only is really good for bigger worlds because it lets you select specific world tiles to export instead of just the whole thing. So this world's only like a couple hundred blocks by a couple hundred blocks. I think it's like 400 by 400. And larger worlds, like 10K by 10K, have extremely long export times. So it's very good for that. However, for this world, we can just go full export. It's going to take like no time at all. You can see it. I've had those worlds of that size, like 10K by 10K, take 3-4 hours even, if they're complicated. Yep, and then when it's done, it says it took 7 seconds. All right, you're done. Now the next step is to open Minecraft. Go to your single player. It should be right at the top. And now, before you load it, whatever version you load it as will be the version of that world. So you can actually, yeah, you might notice the version says Worldpainter because I haven't loaded it yet. You can pick any Minecraft version and it should mostly work. There are some edge cases, but they're not super important to get into right now because we won't be encountering any of them. So pick your desired version. I'm on 1.19.2 with mods, so I can also have shaders. And allowing Minecraft to populate the entire terrain allows it to also include modded ores and things like default world generation, because it's talking to Minecraft for the world generation instead of doing all of that stuff itself. So it doesn't have to have any knowledge of those other ores and things. You'll spawn in, and because I picked creative, I can fly around my world. This is the mountain range. You can see the snow I added, and the jungle, all the beaches, and dynamic trees, which is why the jungle trees look like that. Now, yeah, some of these mountains are still very pyramid-like, and I would definitely recommend going over it with the smooth tool again if that does happen to you. You can also go over it with the raise lower tool, sort of in the middle here, if you're having issues with weirdly smooth mountains like this. It's not a super big world because the default world size is somewhat small, but it's definitely something you can change. And you will notice that past the borders of the world that you generated, it just starts generating regular terrain again, with structures and everything. So you don't even have to worry about missing out on resources in your world, as long as you don't enable walls of bedrock. That is an option. You should be fine, and you won't lock yourself out of any of the game, theoretically, doing this. The mountains look actually pretty cool from a distance, and you can play around with it, especially on smaller worlds like this. Exporting takes almost no time, so it's very easy to test. And you don't even have to relaunch Minecraft every time you want to re-export the world. You can literally just go back to the main menu, export your world, go back into single player, and it will update when you click single player. So it's even faster than you might think it is. So yeah, I think that's about it. And while this is a very basic rudimentary tutorial, I do plan on doing more in the future, so remember to subscribe and comment what you want me to cover next. Do you want it to be a second tutorial? Do you want it to be another game with mods? If it's a more technical game, I can just cover the game, do tutorials on that. Whatever you want, so comment it, and it may make it into the next poll. So see you later, and this has been Game Your Own Way.